I'm so pleased today to be talking to Julian Stodd. He's the self-styled captain of Seasort Learning, and we'll find out a little bit more about that. He's also our 2016 Colin Calder winner for the Learning Awards, given to people who've made an outstanding contribution to learning and development. So, couldn't be anyone better to talk to. Welcome, Julian.
Thanks, Nigel.
You're known as the doyen of social age learning, and I want to understand that a bit more clearly. What is the social age, and why does learning in the social age change from any other kind of learning?
Well, really, I use the premise of the social age to talk about the world that we live in now, and to indicate the broad swathes of change that have occurred. The most visible manifestation is the technology which has changed, but I'd argue that everything's changed. The nature of work itself has. The idea of a career is largely gone, except that which we put together for ourselves. The democratization of technology and creativity has eroded the position of those organizations which used to provide those things to us and expect our loyalty in return for it. So the nature of the relationship, the social contract, between individuals and organizations has changed. The nature of knowledge itself and what it means to learn has changed. And so we see this broad swathe, what I'd describe as an ecosystem of change. The reason I use the social age is to differentiate from the digital age. So I would argue that we're largely through the digital age. That was the short period of time where technology turned up everywhere. It's now mature, if you like. We all have multiple devices. We're connected in multiple spaces. It will continue to evolve. But the changes we're seeing that we have to take most account of are sociological. They're about the rise of community, about the ways that we're connected to other people, the emergence of social leadership, the ability to lead with humility and through permission as differentiating features.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that, if you like, all these devices which we've got have all joined up, and therefore there's a kind of social network of communication which is very different from the way we communicated before and the way we used technology before. Is that the kind of baseline of it, just the baseline of it?
Absolutely. It's that learning itself has changed and the ways that we learn have changed. And crucially, whilst it's facilitated by technology, it's not about technology.
It's about the way we interact. So let's take Ms. Smith. So what is different about the way she learns to the way someone would have learnt 5 years ago? What's changed?
Well, the most visible changes we see are to do with the sort of context of learning. So I'd argue in an old world, we used to be fed learning by an organisation, and we were expected to remember it and process it and apply it according to the way the organisation wanted us to. Today, we're much more attuned to just reaching out, generally through technology, to our community and to co-created and community-moderated sources of information. So if we're going to visit a new city, we'll often look at the Wikipedia entry before we'd look at the city guide itself. And it's quite unlikely we'd go and buy a book about the city. And the key difference between formal sources of knowledge and those co-created types of knowledge is that they're much more dynamic, adaptive, and evolutionary. So to your point of how Ms. Smith would be learning differently, it's much more likely to be in the moment. It's much more likely to be contextualized highly to what she needs to do today. And crucially, there's a feedback loop. So as she learns and applies that learning, she can feed that learning back into the community.
It's also not anonymous, isn't it? It's also identified. That 5 years ago you got stuff and you had no idea where it originated, but because it was given to you, it was therefore trusted. Now, surely, she's looking at the names and saying, oh, that's a Julian Stodd piece. That's more interesting than somebody she's never heard of or something else. So you begin to form your own, almost quite tight community, and you trust that community and you trust the people that community recommend. So it becomes more human. Is that true?
It is true. It has a number of important impacts. So the key points that you made are around authenticity, around validity, and around trust. And the way this impacts on organisations is they've come from a place where their authority was absolute and was imbued by the fact they effectively owned the person through an employment contract. Today, their authority is far from assured. It has to be earned. Trust has to be earned, and the validity of the information has to be verifiable. So we're very used now to booking a hotel or buying something off Amazon and checking the socially moderated reviews of how good it is. Now contrast that to an organisation saying, this is what you need to learn. Because the first question of an agile learner is, why? What else can I learn? And crucially, what if I think you're wrong? Because in that, when I say adaptive and evolutionary, knowledge itself is far more fluid than it used to be, and that has to be taken into account.
It certainly does. And also, there's much more. We need to learn more faster, but far more targeted. We need to learn this, not that, and then we work out of that which is most useful. So it's more personalised, isn't it? It's a much more personalised environment and a more supported environment somehow. We've got this network that we have trusted people. Trust is a big word in this age, isn't it?
It is important. I think the thing I'd reflect back to you on that is two things. So on the one hand, we've seen much more synchronous, immediate, contextualised learning. But on the other side, we also have these giant and complex story arcs of learning. If you like, the learning throughout our career, through our lives. Now, crucially, if we invest in our communities correctly, by which I mean, according to the principles of social leadership, we act with humility, we nurture and support others, we help others to be successful, we'll create an environment in which we have a permission over the span of years to curate our reputation, to develop our expertise, and to do that with the challenge and support of our community. So I'm always wary of the notion that learning is being broken down to bite-sized, small, easily consumable chunks, because it is on one hand, but on the other, we're seeing these massively complex developmental pathways. And the ownership of those doesn't sit with an organisational development plan or competency framework. It sits with us, and it's supported by our community.
Yeah, we go on learning journeys, and those journeys can be extensive. So what does the captain of Sea Salt Learning do then? How do you interact with that world? What value do you add to it? Well, apart from commenting on it.
I've always been interested in two things. One is about having a reflective space to step back, to sort of observe what's happening and to write and share ideas around what's happening. And that's kind of half my life, is the privilege of being able to do that. And these days, the privilege of being able to do that with a wonderful and supportive and inspiring global community. But I've also been very happy to have the opportunity to do something about it. So the other half of my life is gritty and governed by project plans and budgets and clients and associates and colleagues. And that's really what Sea Salt Learning is about. It's about the opportunity to take the ideas and translate them into, so what do we do about it? And the reason that I sort of ended up as a captain is not to claim a position of formal hierarchy, but almost to be able to nurture and develop our own community. So the crewmates that we have around the world are global in nature and mindset. So we are nothing if not argumentative with each other in the best and truest sense of argument, in that we have views, we bring them together, and our community is a sense-making one. Yes. So we operate across 6-week experiments of learning and, crucially, of working out loud and broadcasting and sharing that learning.
So is Sea Salt then, if you like, a tight group which has a less tight group, which has a looser group, which has a very loose group, which has a big global community? So you can't actually say Sea Salt stops at this point here. It just reaches out as a kind of almost organic organisation. Is that reasonable? That's
exactly right. That's the way I describe it. I usually describe Sea Salt as a safe harbour for independent thinkers. And it's a movement. The social age is a movement. I mean, without wanting to sound overly provocative, I would say everything has changed. Most of the large global organisations that we work with and that we talk to understand that there's change in the air, but are entirely failing to adapt at a suitable pace to survive. And we see time and again the disruption of established business models and established industries by younger, more agile, more dynamic startups, not that compete better within a known space, but create entirely new spaces to compete. If you just look at a piece of technology like GoPro, it competes against an established camera market which has beliefs that you need to spend more money, to have better kit, to have bigger kit, to have things like a viewfinder. Whilst GoPro comes along, it's cheap, it's effortless, it's adaptable, it's amazing, and it's shareable. So I don't believe they came along to disrupt the market. They came along to enable people to make amazing films. And hence they have broken the established market.
It's true. So GoPro, actually, what it's about is its headbands, its chest bands, its wristbands, its sticks, all the ways in which the fact you can stick it in the water and film underwater, you can jump up and down, and you can go on a skateboard, you can use GoPro because it's so small and because it's so flexible, you end up with new images which you can then reconfigure into new experiences which you couldn't do with a big heavy camera.
Absolutely. And let me give you a piece about mindset and choreography. So when I scratched the lens on my GoPro, I got the replacement kit, and it came with the small screws and a tiny screwdriver, because somebody has thought, what does this person need when it comes time to change the lens? They didn't charge me a fortune for the privilege of that. They just thought about it. Contrast that with my bank when I'm abroad, who try to send me text messages when they discover I'm in another country to tell me that my account's been blocked, not recognising the fact that I don't use my UK SIM when I'm abroad, but they refuse to email me. So they are still operating on their terms and expecting me to adapt my behaviours to fit their convenience, whilst we see plenty of young and emergent and just more dynamic organisations that operate on our terms. Yes. They're lightweight, they're adaptable.
And they see the world through your eyes, or they see the world through the eyes of their customers, rather than expecting the customer to see the world through the eyes of the organisation. So thank you very much for talking to me, Julian. It's been a pleasure chatting to you today.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you.